What is up, wizards, and welcome to another episode of Building EDH. I am Nick, your Golgari Obsessed Wizard, and today we are going to go over Korvold, Fae-Cursed King. This is a CEDH deck, so let's get into what he does. Flying, and whenever Korvold, Fae-Cursed King enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. So we're going to be taking advantage of this immensely in this deck. Again, this is CEDH, this is not for casual play, so if you're going to build this deck and go to an LGS, please have a Rule 0 conversation with your opponents, letting them know this deck can consistently win between turns 5 and 7. That said, I'm going to get straight into it. So here's how you win with Korvold the main way. You're going to use a combination of Squee the Immortal and Food Chain. So Food Chain says you remove a creature you control from the game, add X mana in any one color to your mana pool, where X is the removed creature's converted mana cost +1. This mana may only be spent to cast creature spells. So the deck revolves around creature combinations for victory. So we are also going to be utilizing Squee the Immortal. Squee the Immortal may be cast from your graveyard or from exile, meaning that when both of these are in play, you can exile Squee over and over again to Food Chain to generate infinite mana of any color you need to cast creature spells. So the way this is going to work is once you have this out and you've done your Squee thing, you're going to get Korvold from the command zone. When it enters, it's going to kill Squee and get a +1/+1 counter and draw your card. Then you are going to exile Korvold to the Food Chain and recast Squee, and then recast Korvold to sacrifice Squee. And you're going to do this over and over and over and over again until you've drawn almost your entire deck, if not your entire deck, and infinite mana to cast creature spells. So now that we've established how the deck is going to win, let's show you those creature combinations that are going to finish the job. So first and foremost, we have Walking Ballista. It's pretty straightforward. If you have infinite creature mana, you just put 1,000,000 mana into Walking Ballista, ping your opponents, and win the game that way. The next couple cards we have are combination cards. So these three are our first combination. So we have Sling Gang Lieutenant, and when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 Goblin creature tokens. You can sacrifice a Goblin, and target player will lose 1 life and you'll gain 1 life. Then we have Putrid Goblin. Persist. When this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. And Metallic Mimic. Metallic Mimic is a shapeshifter, and it enters the battlefield. In this deck, you're going to want to name goblins. So Metallic Mimic enters the battlefield as a goblin, and each other creature you control of the chosen type that enters the battlefield will enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So how this combo works is you have your Sling Gang out, and you sacrifice Putrid Goblin to him. With Metallic Mimic in play, Putrid Goblin will die. He will come back. He'll get a -1/-1 counter because of his ability, but he'll get a +1/+1 counter because of Metallic Mimic's ability, allowing you to sacrifice Putrid Goblin to Sling Gang infinitely to kill your opponents that way. So the next combo we have in the deck is very similar to that last one. It's just got a different set of cards. So here we have Skirk Prospector. You sacrifice a Goblin. You add 1 red. Pretty good. Murderous Redcap. When Murderous Redcap enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player, and it also has Persist. And Grumgully the Generous. Each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So you're going to sacrifice Murderous Redcap to Skirk Prospector over and over and over again. When it ETBs, it's going to do the damage needed to win, and Grumgully is going to keep your Murderous Redcap alive. You're noticing there's a lot of goblins in this set. That's why I named this deck Korvold Goblin King. Just very theme-oriented. Our next combo is Altar of the Brood and Dothri Void Walker. So the way this works is you're going to want to have your Food Chain and your Squee at the ready. This combo was specifically put in this deck for anybody who has Hexproof, because the last combos I showed you all require you to target your opponent. This bypasses that. So you're going to do Squee with Food Chain over and over and over again. Altar of the Brood says that whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into her graveyard. So Squee is going to cause that to trigger over and over again. And then we have Dothy Voidwalker. It's got Shadow, and if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a Void counter on it. You can sacrifice Dothy to put an exiled card onto the battlefield casted without paying its mana cost. The reason why Dothy is in here is in case somebody has a Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, or anything to that regard. Dothy will make sure that it goes into exile so you can guaranteed mill your opponents out and get the victory that way without a single target. So next couple cards we have are substitutes for those first two combos that I showed you. Melira, Slavic Outcast. You can't get poison counters. Creatures you control have -1/-1 counters. Cannot have -1/-1 counters placed on them, and creatures your opponents control lose infect. It's just a great way to counter any infect spells, and again, it's a substitute for if I don't have Grumgully or Metallic Mimic. Same thing with Rhythm of the Wild. The added benefit that creature spells I control can't be countered, and then non-token creatures you control have Riot, which means they're going to enter with a +1/+1 counter or haste. So again, just another way to have that combo piece in there so I can sack my Persist Goblins infinitely. The Seer, just another sack outlet with the added benefit to scry one. So if you don't quite have the victory, but you have a way to sack your creatures infinitely, no problem. You can pick which card you want and then just scry until that's the top card of your library, and it's almost like tutoring. Goblin Bombardment, again, just another way to inflict that damage if I have none of my other sack outlets, such as the Murderous Redcap or the Sling Gang Lieutenant, to do the damage for me. It's very on theme with the deck. Goblin Bombardment, sacrifice a creature, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Pitiless Plunderer, I put Pitiless Plunderer in the deck because, again, you're going to be sacking creatures over and over and over and over again. This is going to make you infinite treasures, which treasures is good in any Korvold deck, and I can use that mana to play any non-creature spells that I may need to play in a pinch. Dockside Extortionist, just because any Korvold deck should have one. When it enters the battlefield, you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. It's a 2-drop, get it in, make a bunch of artifacts, sack the artifacts, you're going to get mana of any color. If Korvold's in play, you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, and he's going to go up and up and up. Perfect card in this deck. So next we're going to move on to the tutors in the deck. These are the cards that are made to grab all of the cards that I just showed you. So of course we have our staple Demonic Tutor. Diabolic Intent is an additional cost to cast this spell. You got to sacrifice a creature, very on theme with Korvold, and again another tutor to get any card we need to our hand. Grim Tutor, search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. You lose 3 life. Worldly Tutor, you search your library for a creature card and reveal that card, shuffle your library and put that card on top. Keep in mind it's an instant speed card, so it's good to be doing this on your opponent's end step, so you're drawing the card that you need exactly when you need it. Entomb, this card is another tutor card that's basically just made to get Squee. A reminder that Squee can be cast from the exile or graveyard, so it's a quick way to get him into the graveyard and you can cast him whenever you need him. Eldritch Evolution, on theme with this deck, as the additional cost is to sacrifice a creature, and you can search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's power, and put that card directly onto the battlefield. Shared Summons, so you can search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Again, just a very good way to get the last 2 combo pieces that you need, and hopefully you have enough mana to end the game that turn. Signal the Clans, primarily used to get a specific type of card, creature card. Search your library for 3 creature cards and reveal them. If you reveal 3 cards with different names, choose one of them at random and put that in your hand, then shuffle the rest into your library. So again, you could get maybe Grumgully and Sling Gang Lieutenant and any other card that all basically do the exact same thing. And it doesn't matter which ones go to the library, the one that you need is going to go to your hand. Next we have Imperial Recruiter. Imperial Recruiter enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. This is meant to get Putrid Goblin, this is meant to get Dockside in a pinch, it can get Walking Ballista. Really good card, gets a lot of your combo pieces. And again, this is the Goblin King deck, so we have some Goblin-specific tutors in here. It's Bogart Harbinger, so when Bogart Harbinger comes into play, you may search your library for a Goblin card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and put that card on top. It's a little bit of a slow tutor, but it tutors for almost anything we could possibly need in order to win. Goblin Matron, following the theme. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a goblin card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's a red 1 extra demonic tutor for any goblin. Very useful. Then we have Goblin Recruiter. When Goblin Recruiter comes into play, search your library for any number of goblin cards, reveal those cards to all players, shuffle your library, and put that card on top in any order. Very, very good card, especially if you've got Dockside out. You can sacrifice some treasures after summoning this creature, and all the goblins that you need are going to be directly into your hand, and you're going to have the mana to play them. Unearth, so now we're getting into the category of Revival. I wanted to put a lot of cards that will bring creatures back from the graveyard, specifically so I could keep using Dockside, or if any essential combo pieces get thrown away, I can bring them back with ease. So this is that section, starting with Unearth. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's every creature card in this deck except for Pitiless Plunderer and Korvold himself. We got Virtuous Maneuver. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend returns a creature card from their graveyard to their hand. Each foe sacrifices a creature they control. Obviously, all of our opponents are going to be foe, unless we are in a political situation. Animate Dead. So you enchant a creature card in a graveyard, and you take that card, you put it onto the battlefield, and you attach Animate Dead to it. If Animate Dead goes away, the creature goes away, and the creature gets -1, -0. But still, 2-drop, get any creature back. It could even be somebody else's creature. Very good card. Next we have Dance of the Dead. It's another enchantment. Take target creature card from a graveyard, put it directly into play under your control, tapped with a +1/+1 counter. Treat that creature as though it were just summoned. The creature does not untap during its controller's untap phase, and at the end of his or her upkeep, its controller may pay an additional 2 to untap it. If Dance of the Dead is removed, bury the creature in its owner's graveyard. Next we have Exhume. It's a little bit of a benefit for all of our opponents, but its primary benefit's going to go to you. Each player puts a creature card from the graveyard onto the battlefield. Reanimate. Again, just really good revival card. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its CMC. Most of the CMC in this deck is 3, so we're not going to be losing too much life here. Speaking of more life, we got Noxious Revival. Put the top card of your library... put a target card from a graveyard on top of its owner's library. Sorry, and you can pay Phyrexian mana to get this to happen. So you don't even have to pay mana, just 2 life, and you're going to get your Dockside back. You're going to get your combo piece back. Victimize. On theme with the deck because it requires you to sacrifice a creature, but you choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard, and if you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Reap the past. Return X cards at random from your graveyard to your hand. Exile, reap the past. This is an X cost, so if you have like 6 cards in your graveyard, you could just have X equal 8. You should have enough mana in this Korvold deck, and you can get all cards from your graveyard back to your hand. Now we're moving on to the protection. So we got Red Elemental Blast. We choose one. We can counter target blue spell or destroy target blue permanent. In CEDH, you're most likely going to be going up against multiple blue decks, if not at least one. So this is a great way to protect your combos and thwarting their attempts at thwarting you. Next we got Autumn's Veil. Spells you control can't be countered by blue or black spells this turn, and creatures you control can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn. Great way to shut down counter spells, a great way to protect your creatures. Most people never see it coming. Next we have Heroic Intervention. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible in a turn. Again, just a quick 2-mana way to stop anybody from wiping your board, getting rid of any or all of your creatures, any of your combo pieces. They're all safe now. So next we got Vexing Shusher. It's a goblin to stay on theme, and this spell can't be countered, and you can pay either a red or a green. Target spell can't be countered. This is good if you're at that point where you're about to go off with Food Chain and Squee. You can cast this card first, and it can't be countered to protect the rest of your combo, just in case you feel like somebody has a blue counterspell or any type of counterspell or any way to thwart your plans. This will protect you and allow you to win. Then we got Lightning Greaves. Just plain and simple. Equip creature has haste and shroud. Protect Korvold. Protect an essential combo piece. 0 to equip. Very good card, CEDH or not. And we're going to move right along to Journey to Eternity. So you enchant a creature you control. When the enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. Then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield transformed under your control. And I will take Journey to Eternity out so you can see the back real quick. Transforms into a land, legendary land card. Tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And then you can pay 3 to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Really good secondary effect. But the main reason why I keep it in here is so if Korvold or anything dies or I need to sacrifice something to Korvold, it can come right back, no problem. Alright, next we have Final Fortune. This isn't necessarily a protection spell, it's just more like a one-off. Taking another turn after this one, you lose the game at the end of that turn. Obviously, we don't plan on losing during the next turn. Maybe we just needed one more turn to get the right piece or to untap and have enough mana to execute any combo that we got going on. Final Fortune is a great way to get you out of a sticky situation. Alright, now we're moving on to the ramp of this deck. So we're going to start off with good old reliable Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, you got Felwar Stone. All of these are going to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Soul Ring's going to add 2 colorless. Lotus Petal, it's a 0-drop artifact that sacrifices to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Quick easy mana, a quick draw, +1/+1 counter for Korvold. Next we got Commander's Sphere. It's 3 mana, so a little bit more on the expensive side for a CEDH deck, but you add 1 mana of any color and you can sacrifice it at any time to draw a card. Perfect in Korvold. Alright, now we're moving on to the dorks of the deck. You got your Iron Mirror, tap to add a red to your mana pool. Ennoble Hierarch, another Goblin. Perfect in this deck. It's a 1-drop that can add any of the colors we need for Korvold. Birds of Paradise basically does the same thing. Taps to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Has the added effect of flying, so in a pinch it can block a dangerous flyer if you don't have Korvold out. Next we have Elves of Deep Shadow. Tap to add a black to your mana pool. It deals 1 damage to you. Again, we're not too worried about the incremental damage because this is CEDH, so we should be winning long before our life hits 0. Llanowar Elves, pretty standard ramp card in any deck. 1-drop, taps to add a green. Finehorn Elves is the exact same thing. Green to play, taps to add a green to your mana pool. Sylvan Caryatid, probably saying that wrong. I challenge you to say it right. It's Defender with Hexproof, 2-drop, and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Alright, next we're moving on to more creatures that technically ramp, but this is very flavorful in the deck because Tireless Provisioner can give us a treasure token. We're not really going to be making foods in Tireless Provisioner. It's just going to be adding treasures passively with landfall. Next we're going to Explore, so you play an additional land this turn and then you draw a card. Dark Ritual, real quick, pay a black, get 3 black. So Burgeoning is great in the early game. Whenever an opponent plays a land, you may play a land card from your hand on the battlefield. If you happen to have a lot of lands in your hand, this is going to ramp you very, very quick. And whether it ramps you quick or it outlives its usefulness as soon as Korvold comes up, this is perfect sack fodder for Korvold. Just get this out of the way because you run out of lands in your hand very quickly, and it's going to draw you a card and put a counter on Korvold. Next we have Carpet of Flowers. During your main phase, you may add up to X mana of any 1 color to your mana pool, where X is the number of islands target opponent controls. So again, this is a CEDH deck. We're expecting to be playing a lot of blue players, so this is just a great way to capitalize on all the blue that they're going to be using. Squandered Resources. This is a very, very good card in this deck. Really good for unexpectedly going off with more mana than anybody thought. You sacrifice a land and add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type that the sacrifice land could produce. Play this ability as a mana source. Fecundity. So whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, that creature's controller may draw a card. Again, it is beneficial to our opponents, but it's going to be more beneficial to us because sacrificing creatures is what this deck do. And it is also a May ability, so you can never deck yourself out with this card. Sylvan Library. So obviously we're moving on to the draw portion of this deck. Because Korvold himself draws, there aren't that many cards that draw. You've already seen one of them. Here's the second. Obviously, Sylvan Library, at the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards from your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put that card back on top of your library. Next we have Necropotence. Skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So with Necropotence, 9 times out of 10, you're pretty much just saying, all right, I'm going to do Necropotence for 20. You're going to draw 20 cards, and in this deck, most likely drawing the top 20 cards in your deck is going to net you something or some way to win, either that turn or next turn. We're moving on to the removal of this deck. Fire Covenant. Kind of looks like Korvold, very synergetic, but it also says that you can deal X damage divided any way you choose among any number of target creatures where X is equal to the amount of life you pay. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. So again, we're using our life as a resource very heavily in this deck, but the deck wins so fast it shouldn't matter too much. A great way to remove any pesky creatures that can be threatening a win or close to winning. Just pay 10 life, kill 2 5/5s, or whatever you need to get the job done. All right, next we're into Pyroblast, where you can counter target spell if it's blue, destroy target permanent if it's blue. It's almost like a previous card that we had. But instead of, what was the other one? It was Red Elemental Blast. It's basically just a second version of that card. Next we got Abrupt Decay. It can't be countered by spells or abilities. Destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Again, this is CEDH, so you're probably going to be encountering a lot of low CMC permanents because people want to make their decks efficient. This is a great way to get anything out of your way. Assassin's Trophy, for the exact same reason. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Yeah, you're giving them a land, but you're getting rid of their combo piece, so it's a very fair trade-off. Force of Despair, I put this card in here as a just in case somebody goes off with creatures or goes wide or ends up making an infinite amount of them, because it's very possible in this game. If it's not your turn, you can exile a black card from your hand rather than pay its CMC. Destroy all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn. So anybody who wastes all their mana putting a bunch of creatures in play is instantly going to regret it. Alright, we are on to the lands in this deck, the final section of it. We're going to start off with our lands that can tap to add potentially any of the colors we need, which is Command Tower. Then you got City of Brass, taps to add a mana of any color, but it deals damage to you. Mana Confluence does the same thing, pay 1 life, add 1 mana to your mana pool. Next we got Forbidden Orchard. Forbidden Orchard, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and whenever you tap Forbidden Orchard for mana, put a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token into play under target opponent's control. This deck can swing with Korvold. Korvold can get really big if you've got Dockside out, but the majority of the way it wants to win is by doing direct damage with your combo effects, so it's okay if you give them a spirit. It doesn't necessarily matter. They're most likely not going to be able to use it advantageously against you. Then you got Savage Lands. It's the first land that I'm showing you that enters the battlefield tapped, but it does tap for any of our colors afterwards. Then we got Tarnished Citadel. So we can add 1 colorless mana to our mana pool, or if we're willing to take 3 damage, we can add 1 mana of any color in a pinch. Then we have Exotic Orchard, tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce. We've got 3 out of the 5 colors in Magic, so we're in high likelihood that somebody's going to have the colors that we need, at least 1. Then we got Fabled Passage. You sacrifice Fabled Passage, search your library for a basic land, and put it on the battlefield tapped. It's just like Evolving Wilds, except this has the added benefit that if you control 4 or more lands, you untap that land. So it's immediately useful to you. Now we're going to move on to the dual lands. We got Stomping Ground, Cinderglade, Rootbound Crag, Dragon Skull Summit, Woodland Cemetery. And then we're moving on to our utility lands. There's only 2 in the deck. Temple of the False God, just to add a little bit of extra mana if we've got 5 or more lands. Ancient Tomb, it's like Sol Ring, except it does damage to you in the form of a land. And now we're moving on to the basics. So we got 2 mountains, 6 swamps, and 5 forests. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to show your love and keep this dream of mine alive. All my socials are linked in the description below if you want to follow me and keep up to date with everything EDH outside of YouTube. If you're thinking about making this deck or just want to use it for inspiration, I've included a link to the deck list below as well. Thanks again for watching, and stay foil.